Our movie begins in one of the most dangerous prisons in South Korea. We're introduced to two of the most powerful and dangerous inmates here, Daska and Daehyo, each leading a mafia gang within the prison. These two gangs were constantly clashing, using water hoses and all available means to separate them and prevent their conflicts from escalating further. The prison warden had reached his breaking point with these gangs, and he didn't know how to handle them anymore. Enter Mr. Lee, the assistant warden, who is tasked with convincing Daska and Daehyo to reconcile and agree to a truce. We see Daska taking a shower while Daehyo waits outside with the other inmates. Mr. Lee's plan to inform Daska of the proposed truce fails when a guard finds out what Mr. Lee is planning. The next day, the warden talks with his assistant, Mr. Lee, and informs him that a dangerous criminal named Yong will be transferred to their prison. Mr. Lee wonders if they really need another problem, but the warden believes Yong's presence might work in their favor. Yong is a notorious killer who can impose control over the inmates, which would help resolve the ongoing issues between Daska and Daehyo. At the same time, Daska's and Daehyo's gangs are in the prison yard. Daska learns that Daehyo had planned to kill him and was about to carry out the plan yesterday. This information leads to a clash between the gangs. Each gang picks a fighter to battle a member of the opposing gang. Surprisingly, the guards do not intervene as usual but instead watch and enjoy the fight. Eventually, Daska and Daehyo face off directly. They exchange powerful blows, either able to overpower the other. Their combat skills seem evenly matched. When neither can defeat the other, the guards intervene to separate the gangs. Mr. Lee then calls Daska and Daehyo to his office, attempting to persuade them to agree to a truce, but both refuse. Meanwhile, the dangerous criminal Yong arrives at the prison under heavy guard. The inmates watch him with fear because Yong is a ruthless killer with a fearsome reputation. In one scene, Daska mocks Yong, striking him, which leads to Daska losing consciousness. Yong is placed in solitary confinement, and the warden visits him, asking him to establish control over the prison and dominate the other inmates. The warden offers Yong a basket of fruit as a token of goodwill for their agreement. At this point, Daska is still unconscious, and his men are trying to revive him. Meanwhile, Daehyo and his crew discuss Yong and reveal that Yong was originally just a security guard. His life changed dramatically when he single-handedly fought off a group of mafia members trying to abduct a girl. Yong's bravery and strength turned him from an ordinary guard into the top figure in the Korean mafia, earning him the respect and fear of criminals everywhere. Returning to the present, we see Yong in the prison yard. The inmates approach him with respect and greet him. Yong calmly asks Daska and Daehyo to reconcile and end their fighting. Remarkably, Daehyo extends his hand to Daska to execute Yong's order. Daska, having no other choice, shakes Daehyo's hand, and they reconcile. The warden, watching from his office, is pleased with the outcome. The film then shows how the lives of the prisoners have changed completely. There are no more fights or arguments among them. Instead, they now enjoy their time together and help each other with tasks and activities in the prison. We see that Yong has been moved from solitary confinement to the cell block where Daehyo and his gang are. Days pass normally in the prison until the warden is promoted and is set to move to a higher position. He decides to throw a farewell party for the officers, guards, and prisoners before leaving, and he organizes the party with a live band. It turns into a beautiful farewell celebration where everyone has a great time together. Next, we meet the new warden, Jo-hang, who arrives to take over the position. He discusses the prison and its inmates with his assistant, Mr. Lee, and mentions that the prison used to be one of the worst. However, since Yong's arrival and his control over the inmates, security has been completely stabilized. Jo-hang thinks he can rely on Yong to maintain order in the prison. However, Hang becomes furious and frustrated when he learns they are depending on a prisoner to maintain security. He hits Mr. Lee and tells him that from now on, security and control will be the responsibility of the guards, not the prisoners. Since then, the prison conditions have changed drastically. Mr. Lee has become extremely strict with all the inmates, to the point where he inspects the cells almost every day. One day, he becomes enraged and violently assaults one of the prisoners without any mercy. The other prisoners see what is happening and realize that Mr. Lee has changed and is no longer the kind and gentle Mr. Lee they once knew. A few days later, while all the prisoners are in the prison yard, Warden Hang takes a group of guards and conducts a surprise inspection of the cells. They discover large amounts of cigarettes, sharp weapons, and drugs. Hang makes a strict decision to increase surveillance on the prisoners, making them all take showers within half an hour and cutting down their food rations significantly. The prison has unfortunately turned into a hellish place with Hang as the new warden. Warden Hang sits with Mr. Lee and expresses his displeasure with Hang's new approach and management style, especially when he asks him to return the prison to its previous state and to make Daehyo and Daska resume their rivalry, with each of them leading their own gang. He wants all the prisoners to hate Yong and become his enemies. Mr. Lee is forced to comply with these orders, and he takes the guards and harshly beats a prisoner, saying that they are not responsible for what's happening and that Yong is the one who brought drugs into the prison. They are simply being punished for his actions. The next day, Horan arrives at the prison with a visiting permit for Yong. Mr. Lee takes her to Warden Hang's office, where she meets with Hang. He tells her that her husband Yong is one of the best prisoners they have because he follows the rules and regulations. Therefore, he will allow her to visit him in the office at her convenience. He also offers her a cup of coffee. But after a while, she loses consciousness, and we find out that Hang had put a sedative and narcotic pills in her coffee. He then takes his phone and takes pictures of sensitive parts of her body while she is drugged. He calls for Yong, who is restrained and unable to stand due to the severe beating and torture. Yong is devastated when he sees his wife, Horan, in this condition. He also learns that Hang has been using her, but he can't do anything in his current state. Yong is overwhelmed with pain, severe beating, and torture. A few days later, Hang summons Daska to his office and offers him a deal. He says that he is willing to get him out of prison and grant him freedom, but on the condition that he takes Horan as a hostage and also captures Yong if he tries to escape from prison. Daska is hesitant at first but ultimately agrees because his mother is very ill with a chronic disease and needs someone to provide her with treatment and care. The next day, Yong successfully lures the guard to his cell. As soon as the guard enters the cell, Yong attacks him, beats him unconscious, takes off his clothes, puts them on, and exits the cell. When he gets to the prison yard, he meets with Dae and his men, and tells them that they need to kill Hang and get rid of him. However, Dae and his men do not agree to this plan. Yong suggests that they cause a big disturbance to create an opportunity for him to escape. Dae and his men agree to this and start a major fight to distract the guards, allowing Yong to head towards the prison's exit gate. At this time, Mr. Lee sees Yong but does not stop him, letting him escape because Mr. Lee was not happy with Hang's actions as the prison warden. After Yong escapes, Mr. Lee immediately goes to Hang's office to inform him of Yong's escape. Surprisingly, Hang is not upset at all and says that he was expecting this to happen. He then asks Mr. Lee to prepare for a visit, as the minister will arrive in a few hours for an inspection of the prison. Mr. Lee gathers all the prisoners and guards and warns them that if anyone does anything wrong or complains, they will face severe consequences. Outside the prison, Yong begins his search for his wife Horan. He encounters some of Daska's men and engages in a fierce battle, defeating them all until he reaches the place where Horan is being held. Daska and his men are there, and Yong fights them off with great courage, eliminating them all. However, Daska surprises Yong with an unexpected knife attack. Despite this, Yong withstands the pain, fights Daska, takes his wife Horan, and they leave immediately. Daska and his men pursue them. Yong asks Horan to go to the nearest police station to report his escape, then leaves her and moves on. Daska manages to catch up with him, blocking his path. Meanwhile, Horan runs as fast as she can to the nearest police station. We return to Yong and Daska, who engage in a fierce and intense fight despite Yong's injury. Daska has a knife and attacks Yong with it, but Yong skillfully defends himself, and eventually both men fall to the ground, unable to continue fighting. Here, Daska admits to Yong that he did all of this under orders from the prison warden, Jo Hang, and he expresses regret for his actions. He then gives Yong his phone and calls a friend who works as a reporter. Yong explains everything that happened in detail to the reporter. We return to the prison where we see Warden Jo Hang sitting happily with the minister. But suddenly, everything changes when the reporter and camera crew enter the office and ask Jo Hang about Yong's escape from prison. They continue to question him about all the illegal actions taken against the prisoners. Jo Hang appears to be in shock and has nothing to say. Mr. Lee orders them out of the office, but the minister has already heard everything and demands an immediate investigation into all matters. The minister instructs that they review the prison records, documents, surveillance cameras, and Jo Hang's personal phone. They find pictures of Horan's body that Jo Hang took when she was there a few days ago. The minister then orders Jo Hang's immediate arrest. At the same time, Yong and Daska are captured and fall to the ground in front of the prison. The guards quickly take them in for necessary medical treatment. After that, the prison returns to a peaceful and calm atmosphere. Mr. Lee is promoted to become the new prison warden. And thus, our film ends today. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you liked the video.